Welcome back, everybody. I'm Mike Shredder. This is Shred's Takes. Thank you guys again for tuning into the show. I'm joined by Andrew Deutser, my friend, good buddy from Columbia. We're in the grad school program together. Then we're going to be talking about the Christmas Day games a little bit, as well as the in-season tournament. So without further ado, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm real excited to talk about it.
Yeah, let's start with just the first headline from Christmas Day, which is Luka Doncic having 50 points and 15 assists, which we'll get into the Suns' woes in probably a couple of minutes, but let's just take a minute to talk about Luka Doncic's greatness. What do you have to say about Luka and his MVP stats at this point in time and just his overall greatness that he's been providing this season for the Mavs?
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna pain me as a Rockets fan, and I tell my Hawks friends like, "Thanks for doing this to me by trading him." But uh, I don't know. He's definitely up there with Embiid. I think it's a two-man show as of Christmas Day for the MVP. He is a remarkable, remarkable player. I don't think there's any other words, and I think last night just proved what that is.
What makes him so difficult to guard? Because if someone from like an outside looking in just says like, look, he doesn't have the highest, vertical, he's not the fastest player. And, he just finds a way to get to the rim, finds a way to get a step back off. I mean, it just, in the way he scores, I mean, it's very much like James Harden was with the Rockets, very much similar to that. How would you
Yeah.
describe, but Harden was even a little quicker though. It's just like, it's a little interesting to see how this works.
Well, so it's interesting you bring that up because one of the places I used to work out in Santa Barbara called Peak Performance Project, he and Harden both have it's like the 99th or 100th percentile in deacceleration. So they're very slow, and I think that's fair to say. I think they'll agree with me saying that, but I don't know them, but I wish I did. Uh they can stop on a dime and just shift people's hips and get any open look. And then I think as a Rockets fan, I've witnessed the most from Luka, and I saw it from James too. They just make tough shots. And it seems like when you play 23 great seconds of team defense, you just don't want it in 77's hands. But I mean, he does so much, so many great things to get to the rim, to finish, types of finishes, finishing under contact and making tough shots. And I think that's a very fundamental European style that we're now seeing from these guys.
I think something that's interesting also to note is just his handle as well. People, I think, just forget
Oh yeah.
how good of a ball handler you really have to be able to get to your spots. I mean, you just kind of watch it like these guys, even with the group like a Kawhi Leonard, this Kawhi Leonard definitely lives off his ability to be strong and have
Mm-hmm.
great skill. Kawhi's more athletic than a guy like Luka for sure, but he doesn't really rely on it a whole lot. It's usually just like using like his handle and his ability to shoot over the top.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you. I don't know if you saw that one crazy shot he got for 10,000 points last night, Luka did, where he just launched a three from like half court and nothing but net. It's demoralizing for a defensive opponent to go against that. But I guess what is different with the Mavericks this year? I mean, I understand they're still only sixth in the West, so it's not like they're a contending team, but they're not a playing team like they were last year, or like a team that's missing the play-in. They just seem to be clicking better than they did last year. Maybe I'm just misreading things.
No, I mean, I think Kyrie's doing a good job as a supplement to Luca. I think I'm blanking on the center's name, Derek Lively. I think he's playing great, and I think that's the perfect complement to Luca. And it's just Luca is going to give you 28, 30, 40, 50 points. It's how do you stop the other four guys from getting 70, 80 points combined, kind of. And, once again, as a Rockets fan, I hope that they don't do anything in the West and do anything in the playoffs. But as a fan of the game of basketball, I love watching Luka Doncic play for 48 minutes. It's awesome.
Yeah, let's shift over to another player that has a very unorthodox way of playing basketball, but still makes it work. That's Nikola Jokic. And last
Yeah.
and yesterday it was pretty funny. Obviously, the comments from Steve Kerr, were evident of it. But he was 18 of 18 from the free throw line. It was 4 of 12 from the floor, but still ended the game with 26, 13, and 8. And then you have Jamal Murray with 28. The one thing I'll say too is interesting about it is I just think, my opinion, I think the Nuggets are, when they're fully healthy, I don't think anyone's beating them in the West. I think there are teams
Mhm.
that can contend with them. Like, and I know you and I have talked about it, the Clippers look like they could potentially do that if they keep what they've been rolling recently
Yep.
going. You look at like the Timberwolves, right? The Timberwolves have at least the size to match up. It's going to be tough with a Gobert has struggled with against Jokic at times just because Jokic's ability to shoot threes, but he's doing a much better job in terms of the perimeter defense overall. So it's not allowing that. And I think the third team, honestly, I'm looking at, in the West is potentially like a team like, the OKC Thunder could be an interesting team. I think they're a little young, but they do have a lot of talent. I
Mhm.
just think that the Lakers, unfortunately, are way too up and down for me to think that they're a legit contender right now. I think that like yesterday even proved that. But mind that, what are your thoughts about Denver as the best team in the West, and who do you agree with some of those contending teams that I mentioned? And if there's other ones you want to mention in the West, feel free.
Yeah. First thing I want to say though about Steve Kerr, when someone else can ask about moving screens from his team, then I'll listen to any refereeing complaints that he wants. But that's besides the point. I mean, like I've mentioned a couple of times, I'm a Rockets fan. I've watched, I'd say 80-90% of the Rockets games so far, and I've had the pleasure of getting to watch the Rockets play the Nuggets 4 times since before Christmas. That team, when they're on and all of their guys are playing, there may not be a team to beat them. I think, especially like going to Denver, playing in the altitude, that's hard. Like I agree with your contending teams, like the Clippers. I think we've had this conversation a lot about if the super team's going to work. I think it's the Clippers, but that's a topic for another time. I Clippers. I'm intrigued with the Timberwolves. I mean, at some point, it's got to be just a team that can sort of stop them, but still score enough. I agree with. I don't think the Lakers can do it. I don't think the Mavs can do it. I mean, they can probably keep up with them. I'm blanking on my other. If the Sun, I mean, if Bradley Beal comes back and turns it around, and maybe the Suns, but I don't think that. I don't. Is the West like a 3 horse race right now?
That's what I'm kind of thinking. I mean, you look at like Sacramento. I just don't think they play well enough defensively. I think if you look at the Mavericks, I don't think they're good enough defensively. I think if you look at the Thunder, I think are an interesting team, but I just think they're too young right now. And obviously, I think that Yoke. I mean, even though I love Chet Holmgren, I think he's been phenomenal this season.
I think
Having him
Jokic should
guard
have
Jokic for
65.
yeah, the thing is you have to tell a team, okay, we're going to shut down the other four options in their starting five and then make Jokic score 30. And the thing is, both ways are not always a great way to do it
Hmm.
because I
Right.
understand people make the argument that Embiid's a more natural gifted scorer, which actually I probably would agree with that. But I would say that it's hard to stop a guy like Jokic, even though both are really tough to stop. And I know Embiid's been passing the ball really well this year, but it's just Jokic is probably the best passing big man I've ever seen. And it's just
Yeah.
putting that it's tough. Going into another conversation because I want to hear your thoughts on this. The Suns right now are 14 and 15 on the season, and last night Devin Booker and Durant combined for 36 points while Luka gave them 50. And I just think that that's and I don't know, and I just looked at it. And my issue with Denver, I'd love to get your thoughts on this in just a couple seconds. Is my issue with Phoenix, excuse me, is that they just don't really play any sort of defense. And I thought that Frank Vogel would be the guy. And I don't think it's necessarily all on Frank Vogel. I think it's primarily on also it's partially on the schemes. I think its second thing is though is that their personnel is not a great defensive personnel team. Like if you think about just who they have, that team's got to be able to score a lot of points because they just don't really have a ton of defense. They just don't. I mean, Yusuf Nurkic is not really known to be a
Yeah.
defender. He's a good offensive player, but it's just they lost all their defensive pieces when they first got Durant anyway. Mikal Bridges obviously would have been really helpful last night in last night's game, but I love to get your thoughts on the Phoenix Suns and maybe what the problems are with that team currently at the moment.
Yeah. The Suns are interesting. Like you look on, I mean, you look on paper, like they shouldn't be a game under 500 at Christmas. Like doesn't make sense, especially when you got like guys like Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant on the same team. Like that shouldn't be happening. And obviously, like, the beautiful excuse that everyone wants to say, there's only one ball, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's basketball, and these guys are professionals and they can figure it out. They don't have any depth. It's like if someone's having an off night, there's no one on the bench that I point to, and I'm like, oh, well, like he can give me 15 points plus energy to maybe bring one of my stars back to reality. Like there's like, what is Eric Gordon their depth? Like I it's
Yeah.
I don't like I look at it and I'm like, from a basketball mind, knowing where you are, knowing that you have no assets for the next 4 years, 5 years, six, like I don't even know.
Yeah, I think it's like the next four from what I recall.
Like,
I look it up.
do you think about blowing it up?
It depends. I mean, again, the stars don't look to be that. Again,
Like
it's
if I'm
early, right? It's just
Phoenix,
like, and they're not healthy. But like, the amount of times I've heard super teams not be healthy, and like Brooklyn was an example of that. The Clippers have generally been an example of that. And I know the Clippers, maybe they turn around this year. Who knows, right? But the excuses
yeah,
up,
but the
yeah. But like you can't.
the
Oh, like if they have
the
it healthy.
Suns,
But the
like
problem is, yeah. Go on.
yeah, they haven't been healthy, but they still have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, or they'll still have Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal and Devin. Like I'm not like when you have three when you have two absolute superstars and then a third on any given day he's a superstar, like I don't know if like I look at it and I'm like, do you go to a team like Oklahoma City who needs one more or two more pieces to make a push, or a Houston who have all the assets in the world and one or two pieces, be like, give us one of your young players, give us one of some draft picks, and we'll give you one of our aged out star. I don't want to say aged out, but like older stars, and like just try and gather something, like kind of what Brooklyn did when they got or when Philly or one of the teams that got Harden. Like just try and get something. Like that's kind of the question I want to ask you is it does that like you just did all these win now moves and it's early. You've said that, but like you're not winning games you're supposed to win. Like you're not the 16 losses aren't to the Bucks, Celtics, and like
No,
only the top teams. Like you're losing to games that like,
lost twice to San
big,
Antonio. San Antonio, I believe, has 5 wins on the year. So
yeah, that's like is Bradley Beal making that much of the is that the like,
well, my issue with again is I think what people didn't realize, and I remember I wrote about this summer, and when I was talking about it with some friends, and Bradley Beal's a terrific player. I'm not gonna, like I think when healthy, he's a very talented, really good player. But the problem is he has a history of injury problems since really like 2018, and it's a shame because the guy when he's healthy, terrific player, can score at all three levels.
Mhm.
Like enough said about him. The issue I don't understand is like last night, the one thing, and this might not exactly answer your question, but the thing is, when I looked at last night, I sit there and say, I get Luka's unbelievable, but if you have Durant and Booker, there should be no way you lose that game, especially when Grayson Allen gives you 32 and Met 2 off the
Mhm.
bench gives you 23. There should be no way you lose that game, especially if the Mavs don't have Kyrie Irving. There should be no way you lose that game
Yeah.
because you on paper you have the more talented basketball team, but you give up 20 to Derek Lively, you give like 16 up to Tim Hardaway Jr., you give up 23 to Derek Jones Jr., and then Grant Williams does what he does generally, and then but like I looked at the stat line, like they out rebounded the Mavs by like 13, and the problem was they had I think 5 more turnovers. And they shot worse from three and worse from two, and that's a difference in the game. Again, you're not playing good enough defense. My issue is I just think that when I watch them play, there's just not the intensity on the defensive side of the ball. And I just think that a lot of times it
Yeah.
just turns like to your turn, my turn on offense, which look, Devin Booker's been terrific as a point guard, actually, to give him credit. He's been passing the ball unbelievably. But the problem is, again, is like if him and Durant are getting double teamed on everything, and the best option you have is Grayson Allen, who played great last night, but again, like 114 points in today's NBA is not good enough to win games. It just, I don't know if you feel the same way, but just it's not unless you have like a Minnesota Timberwolves defense or like a Houston Rockets defense or like a Boston Celtics
Yeah.
defense, right? Like unless you have or a New York Knicks defense. If you have like those defense, sure, but like they don't score enough right now, and it's not like the Mavericks are any of those defensive teams I just mentioned. So I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've talked a lot in between classes about like point guards. And I I think Devin Booker is one of the 10 best players in the league right now. And on his day, maybe top five. He's not a point guard.
No, it's a shooting.
And I think like on days like yesterday where yeah, your two superstars are getting what 33 points combined, you said?
36.
36. You need someone to like stable the ship and be like, hold on, like let's figure something out easy. And like they don't like they both and like they both don't have that mind. And like I look and I'm like, maybe that's what you try and go get to try like if you're not gonna try and like if you're gonna try and salvage it, do you try and go get a point guard like a Reggie Jackson or a Chris Paul, like a kind of like a backup point guard who has starting experience? Like, do you try and do that? Like, do you tell the guys like someone's gonna have to pull a Russell Westbrook and come off the bench? Like, I I I don't know. It's you're putting a lot on. We don't know how much Kevin Durant has left in the tank, especially with an Achilles injury and whatever else and ailments he's had. Like your window isn't as big as his contract length.
Right.
Like, it's like at what point do you look at and you're like, oh, is he the guy we ship off to try and salvage it? What do you do? You know, like
No, it's a tough
I don't
question.
think I think Matt Ishiba is not gonna do that because I mean he bought this team last year and I think he really wants to win. But it's an interesting the Suns are an interesting part.
Yeah.
And I
Especially just
mean
how, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I just think and I'm once again as a Rockets fan, I want this. Like if I'm the Rockets and I'm like, take my Brooklyn picks, take Jalen Green, take Jayshawn Tate, like that's toughness, that's youth, that's there's stuff like I mean, I'll take Kevin
Oh yeah.
Durant on the Rockets team, like with Ime Udoka's defensive mind and the way Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks are playing, like oh, like that
Yeah.
I would do that if I was the Rockets. I don't know if the Suns would do it, but
Yeah, the issue is I don't think the Suns would even though I
yeah.
think both those we talked about that. I think both those assets are good trades. It's just it's interesting because my big thing is and we've talked about this at length, and it's interesting to kind of shift over a little bit from this to the idea of like the in-season tournament, right? And I think
Hmm.
one thing that I think's been interesting is you talk a little bit maybe about stars maybe having to do too much with the Suns. I think the in-season tournament took a little too much out of the teams that won. And I look at the Lakers being 2-6 since the in-season tournament. Now, maybe I think with LeBron and Anthony Davis, they're going to figure out how to be a seventh seed, I would say, in the West. I think I
Hmm.
just trust that they'll do that. Because again, I mean, I do think the six teams above them are going to stay above them. I do think Mavs, Clippers, Kings, Thunder, Nuggets, and Timberwolves are all right now better teams. But I think the one thing that I'm interested about to hear from you is with that, do you agree that there's been kind of that sense of like a lagging effect from the in-season tournament with those two teams? And would you place it after the All-Star break as opposed to the beginning of the season? Or do you think it's better to do it in the season to kind of, even if you have that lagging effect, because it does provide the competition early in the season? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I so I'm going to use some baseball knowledge real quick. There's when a team clinches their playoff spot or um like win their division and pop the champagne, celebrate in the clubhouse. Like the next day they're gonna lose. Like it's the hangover day. Like so, like, am I surprised that the Lakers lost their first game after the in-season tournament? Absolutely not. Like, but I think the biggest difference is the difference in intensity. I think it's just like, I mean, you're gearing up to play for $500,000. Like, you're a little extra juiced, and then you're coming back to your normal game salary, which for most of these guys is a lot more than $500,000. But um, I I just think it's dealing with the change of intensity. I personally would rather it be after the All Star break. I think there's a lot to it where, like, if someone's load managing right now, that's their problem and they shouldn't because you've played 30 games. But I do love, like, actually, like, the players caring a lot about these super intense games. Like, it's awesome, especially in November and December. Maybe the solution is you do it now and you just do like a longer iteration where you break it up and it's not, you don't play your 5 group games in 1 month and then the quarterfinal, semifinal, final. Maybe it's longer. Maybe it's the top two in each group and you play a Champions League style. Like, I would have to write it out to see, but maybe that's just the, you started in December and you kind of do like, and break it up and make it a little longer where it lasts more of the season, which I think would be a little interesting.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think it's interesting because I think that the one thing this tournament definitely did, and I gotta give a lot of kudos to it, is that it definitely made people more excited to watch the regular season early on. And you have those early marquee games. Everyone's gonna get excited for that, like Christmas Day, opening night, obviously, right when you watch those big games on ESPN, TNT, obviously, right? Those kind of make a big difference. I think what was interesting to me though is that what I liked about it is that you really got to see stars emerge. And I know the Pacers have been not as good since it, but seeing the emergence of a guy like Tyrese Halliburton in this in-season tournament format,
Awesome.
and
Awesome.
yeah, I mean, regardless, I mean, look, I think they'll probably be a play-in team in the East, but it's fun. It's fun to watch him play because you're watching them like you would never be able to see them on a national stage. Those were his first like national televised games, from what I heard,
Mm-hmm.
when he played against Boston, and he said like these are the most important games of his career. It's cool. I mean, I think looking at a guy like Halliburton, he's like one of the future stars of the game, right? Or obviously seeing LeBron be able to put it together and win it is really cool as well because obviously just for his greatness standpoint to have now the in-season tournament, that's pretty cool. But overall, just kind of lasting thoughts. What did you think of the in-season tournament as that whole?
So I got two thoughts. The first one is we got to do a little sports management mind real quick. Like, I'm worried if they switch this to a streaming service. I'm very, very worried that people won't care. I think people care because it's like, oh, Knicks Bucks, ESPN, like this different court wearing cool uniforms. Like, I'm gonna watch this game. Like, this is cool. This is intense. Like, but am I like, I'm not a Knicks fan. I'm not a Buck fan. Am I gonna go search that game out on Amazon or something like that? That's a concern for me looking forward for the league. I think the product's great, and I have to eat some crow because I was very, very against it. I was like, what, like, what's like, what, like, why are we doing this? What's the point? But then, like, thing, like how the players loved it, the players bought into it. I'm like, huh, this is fun. Like, I get to see like these young guys from the Rockets that I've watched the last 3 years win a total of 60 games. Like, they're actually playing a meaningful basketball game for the first time since the James Harden era in the bubble. Like, that's crazy. But I really like it. I think just like it's got to be like little minor tweaks. Maybe take some creativity away from the courts. I thought that was a little. They're funny. They're cool, but I really enjoyed the product. I really did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one thing that I really liked about it was just, again, you're giving. I kind of said this on like an individual podcast I did, like the last episode I did, which like you're giving the players a chance to play for something bigger than themselves, and whenever you do that,
Mhm.
you're generally going to get very competitive games. And even people are saying, okay, we wish it was a Bucks Lakers finals. The Pacers deserve to be there, and the competition was still really good because the effort the teams put in was interesting. I do think the Christmas Day games actually generally were like that. And I think one thing I want to highlight back off is you and I have talked. I said I think the Bucks are the team I'm picking, right? But
Mhm.
man, the Celtics look really good. From a starting five standpoint, I don't think there's anyone better right now than that team. And especially just the way that Derek White has emerged, Drew Holiday has fit in, and the Bucks really miss him on perimeter defense. They really do. And I do think also just the fact that like Porzingis has and everyone knows he's a great player, but he's fit in so well into that system. And really, he doesn't have to create his shot a whole lot. They give him a couple post ups, and that's basically it. It's mostly catch and shoot threes or backdoor lobs, and he ends the game with 28 points. It's incredible, and I give a lot of credit to Brad Stevens. I love to give a lot of credit to Joe Mazzulla, who's really evolved his coaching strategy in year two. But what are your thoughts? I want to get because I think the Celtics are an important team to talk about. What are your thoughts about them?
I mean, like I said about Devin Booker being a top 5 player in the league, like that's Jason Tatum. Like I want to get to the point where every single MVP conversation, Jason Tatum is the first or second name I bring up. And I don't have my predictions with me, but I don't think I had him as my MVP. But like I want him to be the MVP. Like he is like such an awesome basketball player, and it's been like that since the time he was at Duke. And I think it's like what we've talked about, my backup point guard theory. Like the Celtics have it. Like who is it? Bryn Forbes
Peyton Pritchard.
or sorry, yeah, Peyton Pritchard, Oregon guy. Like he does a fantastic job of keeping the offense going, and I think that is something that people don't talk about. It's you can take out Drew Holiday, you can take out Jaylen Brown for a couple series, you can take out Tatum, and the offense is still going because you have this unbelievably built roster of depth in the front court, depth in the back court, depth at wing. Like any team that can add Drew Holiday and not give up one of their two best players is incredible. And it's like they're a tough team to play. They're a tough team to beat. And I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who've had to play at meaningful games in the Garden, and they're like, it is not an easy place to play. And I think I'm kind of with you, right? I think the Celtics are the team to beat.
Yeah. What's interesting too is I think this is one reason why I think a team like Minnesota has been interesting to watch is just the presence of a rim protector, right? Because Porzingis, his ability to cover space defensively, and I think Al Horford's a terrific defender, by the way. I mean, his ability to guard
Mhm.
Embiid, he's done a pretty good job on Giannis in the past. But again, the one thing, even though he's really good at switching five and doing those things, you bring Al Horford off the bench, that's great depth right there. But you have Porzingis, who's one of the better rim protectors in the league. And I know the numbers may not always show that because it's usually health, unfortunately, with Porzingis, which is the one thing I'm worried about, obviously, going forward is how healthy can he stay going forward. But I do think, just kind of wrap it up, is I just want to hear this from you because we only have a few minutes left, is who are your right now top five teams and maybe top three MVP candidates? I know this is kind of a question just sprung on you, but
Oh,
I like to end with a big
top
picture
five.
question
Okay.
usually.
I mean, top 5 teams in the NBA. I got it Celtics. I got to put the Nuggets. I got to put the Bucks. I think the Bucks are like Celtics Bucks are 1A, 1B in the East for me right now. Um, like I'm not bought in on Minnesota yet. Like they may be one of the best teams in the NBA right now. I
Yeah.
hope. Like I mean, I may be insanely wrong, but I mean, I can't put them in my top 5. Um, I, Philly's up there too. I think is a really good team. And from what I've seen, since Russell Westbrook's gone to the bench, I think the Clippers are a top 5 team in the NBA right now.
Mhm.
And that's another team of let me see May. Let me see Memorial Day weekend what's going on. But I've told you if a team's gonna work, it's that one. I like them.
Yeah. And then
Oh, and
top three MVP
MVP
candidates.
candidates. Luka, I think is sadly the one. Um, Embiid has got to be up there too. And then you know what? I'm gonna put a little 3A 3B. I'm gonna put Jokic because he's incredible, and I'm gonna put Tatum. I think Tatum should be up there too. And
Yeah.
I know you didn't ask this, but most improved. You know what I'm gonna say
Alperen Şengün.
Alperen Şengün.
I think it's between him and Tyrese Maxey. That's who I would go. I would still give it to Maxey just because, even though I think Şengün's been unbelievable this year. Definitely, and I'm glad he's been. We can talk about it a different day. But I'm glad he's being used for the skill set he's been. What he brings to the table. Like again, baby Jokic for a reason, right? So, but I think to quickly go back, my top five is actually I think the same as yours, and then my it's just, I guess maybe I would put Minnesota in there, but I agree with you. It's just like, have they proven in the playoffs the last couple of years? I don't know. But I would say right now, if you're basing regular season, they have to be in my top five probably. But that's not projecting in the future.
I might want to include Anthony Edwards actually.
Yeah. And then
Dude,
my
I
MVP
forgot
candidates.
about him.
Yeah. My MVP candidates are, I think you got to go. It's a tie between Jokic and no, you're right. Embiid and Luka, excuse me. And then I think it's Jokic. I gotta go with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I gotta go there because I'm saying he's been so good, and that team has been a lot more
He's been
successful
good.
when he started to take the reins and really be that point guard thing. So I think those are the way I'm going with it. But yeah, so I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think we had similar lists. I just think that and then most improved. I think right now I have Maxi, but I think Şengün's really close behind him. So depending on how they can, because Maxi didn't play very well
Mhm.
yesterday, so depending on how it kind of transpires throughout the rest of the season, that'll be a very interesting one because that right now is a two-man race between those two guys. So it'll be interesting to see that. But
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today. I know we only have a few minutes, but this was a lot of fun. I'm excited to hopefully do some more as we go
Yeah.
throughout the rest of the second semester. And I do appreciate you sharing some thoughts. This was a fun conversation. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it too. Yeah, I mean, NBA is a special place. It's a special place to watch. It's a special place to be around these people. Like it's cool, and I mean, I wish they go back to their old slogan of NBA, where amazing happens. Because I mean, that's any given night, something amazing is going to happen. Whether it's a dunk, a step back three, it's amazing, honestly.
Absolutely. So for everybody, I'm Mike Shredder, Andrew Deitzer, and we are going to conclude today's episode. As always, make sure you like and subscribe and follow social media handles. And I'll also include Andrew's information on the social media stuff as well. So thank you guys and enjoy the rest of your week.